Elleroth Shows His Hand. Chapter 28 of Shardik by Richard Adams. And to have left all I had in Dealguy. Compose yourself, Mallow. I'll not live inside their boundaries, not within 10 days' journey of them. That blasted bear priest, whatever he calls himself, Kildrick, that's it. Be reasonable, Mallow. Calm yourself. You didn't leave Dealguy with the least idea of becoming governor of Cabin, let alone with any promise from Bekla. You left because you wanted to succeed to the family estate, or so you told me. No one's deprived you of that, and you're no worse off than you were on the night when you dined with your bull-breeding friend. Don't be ridiculous. Everyone in Cabin knows that General Zelda appointed me on Smar's recommendation. I had a long meeting with the elders before I set out about Cabin's contribution to the summer campaign. It was little enough they meant to give, too. We're not a rich province, never have been. Don't worry, I said. I'll convince them in Bekla. I'll see you're not ruined to pay for the war. What do you think they're going to say now? They'll say I've been kicked out because I couldn't screw enough out of the province. Perhaps you have. But no one here's even asked me yet whether we were going to contribute, so how can it be that? But whatever it is, the Cabin landowners will be convinced I let them down somehow or other. Played my cards wrong, that's it. And now I'm to be replaced by someone who isn't even a local man. Someone who'll have no scruples about fleecing them for more. Who's going to believe me when I say I haven't the least idea why the appointment wasn't confirmed? I'll be lucky if no one seeks my life one way or another. It's not that I care about, though. Do you know a better way to make a man really angry than to promise him something and then to take it away? Offhand, no. But, my dear Mallow, what do you expect when you took up with this bunch of Bruin boys? I'm surprised the possibility didn't occur to you at the outset. Well, didn't you take up with them? By no means. Rather the reverse, actually. At the time when they burst upon an astonished world, I was already Ban of Sarkid, and it was they, when they arrived, who took a good long look at me and decided on balance to leave it at that, though whether they were wise to do so remains to be seen. But to go to them cap in hand, as you did, and actually ask for a nice lucrative appointment, to offer, in effect, to help with the defeat of Sandhill and the furtherance of the slave trade, and besides, they're so frightfully boring. Do you know, last night, down in the city, I was inquiring about the drama. Oh, no, says the old fellow I asked. That's all been stopped for as long as the war lasts. They tell us it's because there's no money to spare, but we're sure it's because the Ortelgans don't understand the drama, because it used to be a part of the worship of Cran. I really felt most frightfully bored when he told me that. The fact remains, Elleroth, that your position as Ban of Sarkid has been confirmed in the name of Shardik. You can't deny it. I don't deny it, my dear fellow. Is the slave trade any better under Shardik, then, than it was 10 years ago when you and I were fighting along Sandhill? If that's a serious question, it certainly doesn't deserve a serious answer. But you see, I'm not a humanitarian. Just an estate owner trying to live a reasonably peaceful life and make enough to live on. It's awfully difficult to get people to settle down and work properly when they think that they or their children may be required to form part of a slave quota. It seems to bother them, oddly enough. The real trouble with slavery is that it's such a terribly short-sighted policy. It's bad business. But one can hardly go the length of leaving one's ancestral homestead just because a dubious bear has taken up residence round the corner. But why are you actually here in person, on the bear's business? Like you, perhaps, to make the best deal I can on behalf of my province. Cabin's in the north. It's got to stay in with Bekla. But Lapan's a southern province, a disputed province. You could declare openly for Ketlis, secede, and take half Lapan with you. Dear me, yes, so I could. Now I wonder why I've never thought of that. Well, you make fun of the business, but I don't find it so amusing, I can tell you. It's not the loss of the governorship I mind. What I can't stand is that they've made me look like a fool with everyone I've known since I was a lad. Can you imagine it? Here he comes, look. Thought he was going to be a governor and tell us all what to do. Come home with tail between his legs, that's it. Oh, good morning, Mr. Mallow, sir. Lovely weather, isn't it? How can I go back to my estate now? I tell you, I'd do anything to harm these blasted Ortelgans. And whatever I did, they'd deserve it if they can't run an empire better than that. I'm like you. It's bad business methods I object to. Do you mean what you say, Mallow? Yes, I do. I'd risk anything to harm them. In that case, let us just step outside for a stroll in some nice lonely place with no propinquitous walls or bushes. What a pleasant morning! You know, every time I see the Baron's palace, it seems to express something fresh, original, and delightfully un-Ortelgan. Where was I? Ah, yes, in that case, I may perhaps be able to lead you step by step to the highest pitch of quivering excitement, or somewhere like that, anyway.
What do you mean?
Well, you see, I am not, alas, the good, simple fellow that you suppose. Beneath this well-washed exterior there beats a heart as black as a cockroach and fully half as brave.
Well, you've evidently got something you mean to say. Tell me plainly. I'll be secret as you like.
Perhaps I will. Well, then, you must know that at one time, about 5 years ago, when Sandhill came through Sarkid on his march from Bekla to Ikat, I was seized with a foolish desire to take some of my fellows and join him.
I wonder you didn't. I suppose you jibbed at the idea of losing the estate and everything else?
Oh, I jibbed practically without stopping. I was gibbering, in fact. However, I managed to get myself more or less to the point of departure when Sandhill himself came to see me. Yes, at the outset of a desperate campaign, with everything to be organized and Ikat to be turned into a military supply base, that remarkable man found time to come 20 miles to talk to me and then return by night. I dare say he knew I wouldn't have obeyed anyone else.
You obeyed him? What did he come to say?
He wanted me to stay where I was and put on a convincing act of benevolent neutrality to Bekla. He thought that if it were skilfully done, it would be more useful to him than leaving Sarkid to be controlled by some nominee of the enemy. He was quite right, of course. I've always hated people thinking I decided not to go and fight, but the advantages to Sandhill have been greater than anything he could expect from my shouting "Yeah!" at our Telgan spearmen. He gets to hear a great deal about the movements of Master Gedladan and the other man, Zelda, and they find themselves in all sorts of difficulties whenever they're operating in the neighborhood of Sarkid. You know, couriers disappear, funny accidents happen, commandeered rations seem to disagree with people, and so on. Any little larks we can think of. In fact, I honestly believe that if it weren't for Sarkid, Sandhill's western flank would have been turned long ago, and he might never have been able to hold a cat at all. But it needs very delicate handling indeed. Gedladan's a tough, ugly customer, and I've had to go to great lengths to convince him that I prefer his side to the other. For years I've kept him thinking that on balance, and because of my local influence and knowledge, it would be better to keep me than to replace me. Little does he know that my love of boyish mischief leads me to grease his stairs from time to time.
I see, and I suppose I might have guessed.
Now, this next bit is the sensation of a lifetime. Your pulse will tingle with 1,000 thrills. Well, say 500. About a month ago, Sandhill paid me another nocturnal visit, disguised as a wine merchant, incidentally. And what he told me was that this spring, for the first time, he is strong enough both to cover Ikat and to attack northwards in force. In fact, he may at this moment have begun a march that will take him north of Bekla before he's done.
Not to Bekla?
That'll depend on the support he gets. Initially, he probably won't try to attack Bekla, but simply march into the north and see whether any of the provinces will rise for him. Of course, he may come upon a good opportunity to defeat an Ortelgan army, and if so, he's not the man to waste it.
And where do you come in? For obviously you do.
Well, as a matter of fact, I am that despicable creature, a secret agent.
Get away!
I trust I may in due course. Does it occur to you that if something really nasty were to happen in Bekla just as Sandhill begins his attack, these superstitious fellows would be most upset? Anyway, it did to Sandhill. So I came as a delegate to the council.
But what do you mean to try to do? And when?
Something reckless, I fancy, will be appropriate. I had considered the possibility of causing the king or one of the generals to cease to function, but I don't think it can be done. I missed a rather good chance yesterday afternoon due to being unarmed, and I doubt whether another will present itself. But I have been considering. The destruction of the king's house and the death of the bear itself, that would have a calamitous effect. It might well tip the scale, in fact, when news reached the army.
But it can't be done, Elleroth. We could never succeed in that.
With your help, I believe we might. What I intend to do is set fire to the roof of the king's house.
But the place is built of stone.
Roofs, my dear Mallow, roofs are made of wood. You couldn't span a hall that size with stone. There will be beams and rafters supporting tiles. Look for yourself.
There's even some thatch at the far end. You can see it from here. A fire should do well if only it could get a little time to itself. It'll be seen at once. And anyway, the place will be guarded. How could you possibly climb up to the roof carrying a torch or whatever you're going to need? You wouldn't get near the place before you were stopped. Ah, but this is where you will be so invaluable. Listen, tonight happens to be the Spring Fire Festival. Have you never seen it? At nightfall they extinguish every flame in this city until there is total darkness. Then the new fire is kindled, and every householder comes to light a torch from it. After that, the whole place goes mad. There will be a brazier, or at least a torch, burning on every accessible roof in the city. They have a procession of boats on the Barb, full of lights, and made to look like fiery dragons. The water reflects them, you know. Very pretty. There will be a torchlight procession. Any amount of smoke in people's nostrils, and their eyes dazzled. Tonight, if ever, a fire on the roof of the king's house won't be noticed until it's too late. But they don't leave the bear unguarded. Of course not, but this we can deal with, if you are as angry and revengeful as you say. I've already marked a place where I think I can climb to the roof, and to make sure I've risked buying a rope and grapnel. After dark, you and I light torches and set out for the festival, armed under our cloaks, of course, and rather late. We make for the king's house, and there we silently deal with any sentries we may find. Then I'll climb to the roof and start the fire. There will almost certainly be a priestess left in the hall to attend upon the bear, perhaps more than one. If they're not silenced, they'll spot the fire from below, so you'll have to go in and tackle whomever you find in the hall. Why not just go in and kill the bear? Have you seen the bear? It's stupendously large, unbelievable. Nothing but several heavy arrows could do it. We haven't got a bow, and we can't risk attracting attention by trying to get one. When the fire gets a grip, won't the bear simply go out into the rock pit? If it's already in by nightfall, they drop the gate between the hall and the pit. It's in at the moment. I don't fancy the idea of using a sword on a woman, even an Ortelgan priestess. Neither do I, but, my dear Mallow, this is war. You need not necessarily kill her, but at the least you'll have to do enough to stop her raising the alarm. Well, I suppose I do. The roof's burning and about to fall in on the bear, and you've climbed down and joined me. What do we do then? Vanish like ghosts at a cockcrow. But where? The only access to the lower city is through the Peacock Gate. We'll never get away. There's quite a fair chance, actually. Sandhill advised me to look into it, and I did yesterday afternoon. As you know, the city walls run south and completely encircle Crandor, but high up, near the southeast corner, there is a disused postern in the wall. Sandhill told me it was made by some king long ago, no doubt for some unspeakable purpose of his own. Yesterday afternoon I walked up there, as Sandhill suggested, and had a look at it. It was all overgrown with brambles and weeds, but bolted only on the inside. I shouldn't think anyone's touched it for years. I oiled the bolts and made sure it can be opened. If anyone's gone there since and seen what I've done, that's too bad, but I doubt they will have. I had a nasty moment coming back when I met the so-called king and General Zelda walking in that direction, but they turned back soon after I'd passed them. Anyway, that's our best chance, and we can't do better than take it. If we can get as far as the upper slopes beyond the Barb without being caught, we may very well get through that gate and reach Sandhill's army in 2 or 3 days. No pursuit will go faster than I shall, I promise you. I call it a thin chance. The whole thing's more than risky, and if we're caught... Well, if you now feel that you prefer not to take part, my dear Mallow, by all means say so. But you said you'd risk anything to harm them. As far as I'm concerned, I haven't kept my skin whole these 5 years just to come here and risk nothing. Sandhill wants a resounding crash. I must try to provide one. Suppose, after all, I did kill the woman. Couldn't we simply dive into the crowd and pretend complete ignorance? No one would be able to identify us, and the fire might have been an accident, blown sparks on the wind. You can certainly try that if you prefer, but they're bound to find out that the fire was no accident. I shall have to rip up the roof to get it to take properly. Suspicion will certainly fall on me. Do you think it won't on you after the motive you've been given today? Can you trust yourself to resist suspicion and inquiry convincingly for days on end? Besides, if the bear dies, the Ortelgans will be beside themselves. They are quite capable of torturing every delegate in the city to get a confession. No, on balance, I think I prefer my postern. Perhaps you're right. Well, if we succeed and then manage to reach your Ketlas,
You will certainly not find him ungrateful.
as no doubt you realize, you will do very, very much better for yourself than you would as governor of Cabin. I believe that, certainly. Well, if I don't turn coward or think of another stumbling block before nightfall, I'm your man. But thank God there isn't long to wait.